how much do we really know about our national heroes? I mean, beyond the statues and the official stories, are there deeper layers?
That's a great question. Often there are.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into Jose Rizal, such a pivotal figure in Philippine history. We want to peel back some of those layers.
Exactly. And we're drawing from a really rich source titled Rizal, Heritage, Upbringing, and Land Conflicts.
Mm.
Our mission today is really to unpack that intricate tapestry of his background.
Mm.
So, not just his cultural roots, which are fascinating, or his formative years, but also, crucially, the land conflicts. They fundamentally shaped his family's reality.
Right. Setting the stage to understand maybe some surprising influences,
Yeah.
things often overlooked in the grand narrative.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We tend to think of national heroes as these, well, singular figures,
Hmm.
but their identities are often incredibly layered, aren't they? And what's really striking with Rizal is this deep connection to the Chinese Mestizo community.
It's absolutely critical.
That's a huge piece of the puzzle.
It really is. You see, uh, Chinese merchants were already present in the Philippines way back 16th century even.
Wow, early on.
Yeah, long before Spanish rule really solidified. But they became particularly prominent during the Spanish colonial period. They were um, a vital source of capital for Manila.
Right, and that economic importance, that led to places like Binondo being set up, didn't it? Specifically for Chinese mestizos who'd converted.
Precisely. Bernando was a permanent settlement for them. And these communities weren't just in Manila. They emerged in many parts of the archipelago.
Okay.
And their legal status, this is interesting, it was actually formalized in 1741.
Ah,
The whole population was officially reclassified for tax purposes mainly.
yeah.
You had Spaniards and Spanish mestizos, Indios, Chinese, and then Chinese mestizos. 4 categories.
Hmm. And the Spanish, they saw the Chinese themselves as a threat.
Yes, that's key. They saw the Chinese specifically as a threat to their authority, arguably more so than the Indios at that point.
And the sources, they're quite specific on the definition of a Chinese mestizo.
Very precise. It was either someone born of a Chinese father and an Indio mother,
Okay.
or a Spanish mestiza who married a Chinese mestizo,
Right.
or the child of that union, a Spanish mestiza and a Chinese mestizo.
But there's that curious distinction if a Chinese mestiza and an Indio had a child.
Correct. That child was listed as Indio.
Shows how these categories could be. Well, complex
Mhm.
and maybe a bit arbitrary.
Definitely nuanced.
Yeah.
But what's truly significant here is how influential this Chinese mestizo group became.
Right.
They rose to prominence in industry, commerce, business. Real movers and shakers.
Mm-hmm.
Their entrepreneurial skills, it wasn't just about personal gain.
Yeah.
It's widely credited with helping the Philippine middle class emerge.
Ah, okay. So stability, identity formation.
Exactly. Economic stability, yes,
Yeah.
but also playing a foundational role in shaping the very idea of a Filipino identity.
So it wasn't just economics then. Their unique position, kind of insiders and outsiders.
That's a good way to put it.
It sort of forged this early blueprint for Filipino nationalism, showing how economic power could become, well, political and cultural identity.
I think that's fair to say.
Right.
And crucially, they shared very real grievances with the Indios.
It's about the Spanish rule.
About the harsh conditions, absolutely.
Yeah.
You see figures like Pedro Paterno, Gregorio Sancianco, both Chinese mestizos themselves.
Right.
They wrote passionately about being Filipino, defending their dignity, even explaining why the Indios might seem indolent under those conditions.
And Rizal knew their work.
He did. The sources say their writings were nurtured by Jose Rizal. And these figures weren't just writers. They were involved in the armed revolt, too.
And this brings us right back to Rizal himself. He was, what, a fifth-generation Chinese mestizo?
That's right, 5th generation.
That really reframes the picture, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And here's where it gets even more complex.
Okay.
While Rizal's famous novels No Le Matanger, El Filibusterismo, they brilliantly exposed Spanish abuses and corruption.
Absolutely legendary for that.
Yes. But paradoxically, those same novels, they also, and the source notes this, brimmed with insults and scorn for Chinese immigrants in the Philippines.
Wait, for the immigrants, not the mestizos like himself.
Correct. Explicitly reflecting his contempt for those contemporary Chinese immigrants.
Yeah. That's quite a tension. A national hero, product of this mestizo success, but holding contempt for newer Chinese arrivals. How do historians sort of process that? What do the sources suggest?
Well, it reveals that identity isn't simple, right? It's not monolithic.
Mm-hmm.
The sources seem to suggest a distinction was being made. The established Chinese mestizos were seen as integrated, maybe even foundational, to this emerging Filipino identity.
Okay.
Whereas the newer Chinese immigrants, well, they were perhaps viewed as a separate group, sometimes competing economically, maybe even seen as collaborators or associated with exploitative practices under the Spanish system.
So a different group altogether in his eyes, perhaps.
It forces us to ask, how much of identity is inherited and how much is shaped by your immediate experience, your aspirations for your nation.
That's a critical point. It makes you wonder if even our heroes have these complex, maybe contradictory views. How do we interpret their struggles?
Exactly.
Okay, so we've set this broader stage, the history, the cultural currents. Let's zoom in now on Rizal himself, his early life. How did all this translate into his own upbringing?
Well, family-wise, he was the seventh of 11 children.
Wow, big
A
family.
big, bustling family. He was the second boy. Paciano was his older brother, a really significant influence later on.
And his heritage itself was incredibly diverse, wasn't it?
So,
The sources mention Negrito, Malay, Indonesian, Japanese, Chinese, Spanish.
a true melting pot, though predominantly Malayan descent is noted.
Imagine the mix of influences just within the family.
Absolutely. Even his surname, Rizal, has a story. It was adopted by his great-great-grandfather, Domingo Lamco, back in 1731. Yes, Domingo Lamco. Rizal became a second surname for the family, likely to avoid drawing unwanted attention from the Spanish authorities, who might have been suspicious of the Lamco name.
Ha! Practical. And his very first teacher was his mother.
That's right, Teodora Alonso, a remarkable woman. By age 3, they say, he could recite the alphabet and prayers.
Incredible.
Then he had private tutors at home, Maestro Celestino, Maestro Lucas Padua, and a man named Leon Monroy.
What did Monroy teach?
Spanish and Latin, really crucial for his later education and writing.
And then formal school.
Yes, he went to a private school in Biñan under Maestro Justiniano Aquino Cruz.
And wasn't there painting, too?
There was. He took painting lessons from a man named Juancho, who happened to be his school teacher's father-in-law. So academic and artistic training right from the start.
Multi-talented even then, and he excelled.
Oh, definitely. The sources are quite clear. He was the best student in school, outperforming all the Biñan boys.
A prodigy.
Seems so.
But beyond the lessons, it's those family influences that really jump out. It sounds like he had this incredible support system.
Absolutely. It wasn't just one person. Each family member seems to have played a distinct role in shaping him.
Like who? What did they instill?
Well, his father, Francisco, taught him self-respect, love for work, independent thinking.
Okay.
His mother, Teodora, instilled religiosity, self-sacrifice, and, significantly, a love for the arts.
Mm-hmm.
His older brother, Paciano, nurtured his love for freedom and justice, a huge influence.
Right.
His sisters taught him respect and kindness towards women.
Important.
And then uncles, too.
Mm.
Uncle Gregorio encouraged his love for books, hard work. Uncle Jose helped him develop his skills in painting, sketching, sculpture.
What stands out to you about all that? I mean, it sounds like this incredibly well-rounded, deeply supportive upbringing, cultivating so many skills, so many values, almost like he had every advantage.
Yeah, it does sound idyllic in a way. But what's striking to me is the intentionality. It doesn't seem random. It feels like a concerted effort to foster a complete person intellectually, morally, artistically.
Right.
And this comprehensive upbringing, steeped in both intellectual curiosity and a strong sense of moral uprightness that probably provided the fertile ground for his later critical thinking.
And his willingness to challenge things.
Exactly. Perhaps it was precisely this strong foundation that gave him the courage, later, to question the status quo, to see the injustices.
Fascinating connection, but as you said, personal development doesn't happen in a vacuum.
No.
To really get Rizal's path, we have to look at this major socioeconomic force. The land disputes. This wasn't just abstract history for him, was it?
Not at all. It was deeply, deeply personal. To understand it, you need a bit of background on the Friar lands.
Okay, set the scene.
So when Spain colonized the Philippines, the king basically declared ownership of all the land.
Right.
He then awarded huge tracts haciendas to loyal Spaniards. About 120 Spaniards got these grants. Some were massive, called Sitio de Ganado Mayor, others smaller, Caballerias.
But didn't many of them prefer the galleon trade? That seems counterintuitive, having all that land.
It does. But yes, many hacienderos found the galleon trade, that trans-Pacific route, more appealing, maybe a quicker path to wealth than developing the land.
Leaving the door open for...
For the Spanish friars, they acquired significant land holdings through The sources say various means, often quite questionable means.
Right, the Friar lands.
Exactly. Then, in the 18th century, there was this agricultural export boom, and the inquilinato system really took hold on these friar lands.
How did that work, the Inquilinato system?
Think of it like three layers. At the top, the landlords, the friars.
Okay.
Below them, the inquilinos. They were tenants leasing large parcels of land. People like Rizal's family.
Ah, okay. So they were the middle layer.
Correct. And beneath them were the kasamas, the sharecroppers, who actually worked the soil day to day.
Landlord Inquilino Kasama, got it.
And this system, while maybe seeming orderly on paper, became a huge source of tension, a defining feature of the colonial economy, really.
And this brings us straight to Calamba, the Hacienda de Calamba dispute, which directly involved the Rizals.
Yes, that specific hacienda has quite a history itself. Originally owned by a Spaniard, donated to the Jesuits,
Okay.
but then the Jesuits were expelled. Spanish government took it over, sold it to a Don Clemente de Azanza in 1803.
So it changed hands a few times.
It did, and eventually it passed into the hands of the Dominicans. They claimed ownership right up until the late 19th century.
And the Rizal family's role in this?
They became one of the principal inquilinos, key tenants. They leased a substantial chunk of land, about 380 hectares,
Wow, that's significant. What did they grow?
primarily sugarcane, hugely in demand on the world market at that time.
So this wasn't just a side hustle. This was their livelihood.
Absolutely. The family derived most of their income from land they rented from the Dominicans. It was their economic core.
But then conflicts arose. When did that happen?
The serious conflicts over ownership and rent in the hacienda really blew up around 1883. And this wasn't just some distant legal fight. It significantly, profoundly affected the Rizal family, making this whole land issue not just historical background, but something deeply personal, something that would, you could argue, ignite his drive for reform.
So wrapping this up, we've really dug into these different facets of Jose Rizal. His significant but also complicated Chinese Mestizo heritage,
Yes.
the incredibly rich and diverse influences from his family shaping his talents, his values,
That supportive network.
and then the simmering pot of the Calamba land dispute becoming a real crucible for him. You really see how interconnected his personal story is with these huge historical, cultural, economic forces.
It's truly striking, isn't it, how these elements that might seem separate, cultural identity, family values, economic injustice, how they all converge. They came together to shape this monumental figure. And understanding these deep roots, it gives you such a richer, more nuanced picture of his motivations, his struggles.
Yeah.
Much more than just focusing on one aspect.
You see the whole person in their whole world.
Is-
So, considering those conflicts, we talked about identity, heritage, power in Rizal's own life. Kind of leaves us with a thought, doesn't it? What unexamined influences might be shaping the figures we admire today? Or the movements defining our own time? There's always, perhaps, a deeper story to uncover if we look closely enough.